Hi, it's Jill Schlesinger. On this episode of Jill on Money, don't worry if you've already blown your New Year's resolutions.
You can have health goals. I want to lose X amount of weight by X date. And if you achieve that goal, you feel really great. And that goal helps motivate you and build that healthy lifestyle. But if you miss the goal, you're still way healthier now than you were. And you'll hit that goal a month or two later. Like, it's fine. And that's how we should be treating our business.
Welcome to the Jill on Money podcast. We are presented by Marcus by Goldman Sachs. It is a new year, and it is time to start addressing some of the big issues in your life. Now, some of you may have made resolutions about getting back to the gym or eating healthier. Maybe you've got your financial resolutions, but there's also some workplace resolutions that I'm sure many of you have made. And that's why I am delighted to bring to you Simon Sinek. He is a noted author and consultant. His new book is called The Infinite Game. You will love this guy. He's really smart. He talks about the difference between long-term and short-termism. And so here is our interview with Simon Sinek.
You're listening to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
Before we start, what's your best financial or career decision you've ever made?
The best career decision I ever made, look, I could say, the best career decision I ever made was quitting to do my own thing, but that led to disaster. My business, I lost my passion for what I was doing, and my business wasn't doing well. So I would say that the best business decision, the best career decision I ever made was learning the lesson that I don't have to know all the answers, and if I don't have to pretend that I do. When I had my own business, I thought because I was the boss, I had to know all the answers. And if I didn't, I definitely pretended that I did.
Yeah.
And that's what took my business in a bad direction. And it was only when I learned the lesson to ask for help and admit that I didn't know something did things completely reverse.
Tell us about yourself. So people may know your name from a TED Talk, from your book called The Infinite Game. But who are you? What's your story? Where'd you grow up?
First and foremost, I'm an optimist.
I don't know what that means. That's so fascinating.
I want to define myself by who I am, not what I do. It's so funny on the backs of books, and you see these blurbs that says, name, author, CEO, blah, blah. We're defining ourselves by our work or by our product. But what happens if you're no longer the CEO? What happens if you're no longer writing books? Are you still those things? So first and foremost, I'm an optimist. I think my worldview was formed, by my upbringing, of course. I had an amazing upbringing. I grew up all over the world as a kid. Born in England, moved to South Africa, moved back to England, moved to Hong Kong, and then moved to exotic New Jersey.
Why don't you have a cooler accent if you've lived all those places?
Well, I was a kid when I came to America, and when I go to England to talk to my parents or watch Top Gear, my accent gets very English.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your career and this business, and then you'll lead us into the paradox of being a human being.
Well, my career, the current path that I'm on, was a complete accident. I started off in the ad world and quit and started my own little marketing consultancy.
Do you know why I knew you were in the ad world?
Why?
You got great hair.
That's very kind.
I'm just saying that most people...
Is there a correlation?
Yes, a very strong corration.
So if you have great hair, go into advertising?
At least with guys.
That's interesting.
Yeah, bald guys go into investment banking.
That's funny.
Interesting.
Well, maybe they started off in advertising and then went into banking as they got older? No.
I don't know. I don't think so. So advertising.
So I was in the ad world, had a good career there, quit my job, started my own thing, and that went well for a couple of years. But my fourth year in business, there's this statistic that hangs over your head when you start a business that the vast majority, 90-something percent, fail in the first 3 years. And so once I got through the first 3 years, I had joined a very sort of special club in America, of entrepreneurs who'd sort of survived. But that fourth year was very, very different because that drive and excitement had worn off, the novelty had worn off, and now I had the difficult job of actually building the structure of building a business. And my passion fell out of me. I mean, I lost my passion for my own work, and I was quite frankly embarrassed because superficially my life was good, right? I had my own business, we had great clients, we did great work, but I didn't want to wake up and do it again. And so I kept that to myself. A lot of my days were spent lying, hiding, and faking. I was pretending that I was happier, more successful, and more in control than I felt. And it wasn't until a very dear friend of mine came to me and said, "I'm worried about you. Something's different, something's wrong." And it gave me a safe space to come clean.
What a friend.
I know. I'm immensely and eternally grateful. It released all this energy, that all of that energy that went into pretending every day could now go into finding a solution. And the solution I found was this thing that I called the why. I knew what I did. I knew how I did it, but I didn't know why I was doing it. And I learned that based on the biology of human decision-making, that was the missing piece. And so I became obsessed with my why. And it restored my passion to levels I'd never experienced before. I shared it with my friends, because that's what you do when you discover something wonderful. You tell your friends about it. My friends started making crazy life changes. And people just kept asking me. Friends would invite me to come to their apartments in New York City and share it with their friends. I literally would stand in someone's living room and talk about the why and help people find their why for $100 on the side. People just kept inviting me, and I just kept saying yes. And so my career took an entirely different path.
What are the questions? Because you wrote a book that's called Start With Why. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the questions that you think we could ask ourselves if we're feeling in that rut?
What is so important to you that is worth sacrificing? Money is not it. That you're willing to sacrifice your personal life, that you're willing to travel a lot and miss your family, not be there to raise your kids. What are you working on that all of those sacrifices are worth it? Turn down a better high-paying job to stay where you are. People do that all the time because there are things that are more important to us than making money. We know that. Like everybody knows that. So the question is can you put into words what is so important to you that you would be willing to sacrifice? And that doesn't mean you have to enjoy the frequent business trips or being away from your family. Of course, we all want to make more money, but you don't enjoy it, but it feels worth it. Mm-hmm. And that's the path you want to take yourself on. And the way you find your why is you look for patterns in your life, which is you look for all the times where you did have immense joy, that you were in the flow or whatever you want to call it. Whether it was commercially successful or not, you just felt like this was the best thing in the world. I want to keep doing this. And what you'll discover is in all of those peaks, there's a pattern, and that pattern is your why.
I really wish I met you about 20 years ago. I feel like you might have saved me, A, a lot of emotional distress and therapy appointments, but B, also money and time. Yeah. Like these are big parts of your life that are sort of quickly fading away. And
people start thinking about their legacies in the latter half of their years. It's like second-term presidents think about their legacies. First-term presidents think about their re-elections. So, and we're all the same. And so the question is, to adopt an infinite mindset means we start thinking about our legacies at 19 or 20 years old, not at 65 or 70. You start thinking what you're going to leave behind at the beginning of your professional life, not at the end of your professional life.
Are we talking about something that is a privilege of the wealthy? In
No.
other words, so translate this to like middle-class person listening to this right now. Like, hey, I'm grinding it out. I'm a teacher and I'm working hard and all I can think about is getting to retirement.
Yeah. So an infinite mindset, in fact, quite the opposite. I find that people who've had great commercial success, great financial success, actually, they're the ones who, unfortunately, have defined success as numbers. People who are definitely in a service realm, whether it's military or public service or teachers, they went into their professions knowing they weren't going to get rich. And so the healthier ones looked for alternative definitions of success. So it doesn't matter what our jobs are, how much money we have. The question is, are we contributing to something bigger than ourselves? And a teacher who's just looking forward to retirement, I would say, has lost that infinite mindset.
Right. They might have had it in the beginning.
They might have had it at the beginning.
Maybe they're burnt out.
And so the question is it's not just helping kids. Like, of course, that's what all teachers do.
Right.
But it's like I went into this profession because I imagine a world that is different to the world we live in now. And I want to advance towards that idealized state of the world. And I choose teaching as a means to get there, right? So in the United States, an example of that is the Declaration of Independence. Our founding fathers wrote down for us that they imagined a world in which all people were created equal, endowed with unalienable rights, amongst which include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they won the revolution. Now the heavy lifting begins. And you can see these milestones in American history that show us that we're trying to move towards that ideal. The abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights, gay rights, like all of these huge milestones, which are imperfect and still ongoing themselves.
Yeah.
But you can see that we're trying to move towards an ideal. And we will never get there, but we will die trying. And that's the point. That's what gives our life and our work meaning, that we're moving towards an ideal state and we feel like the world is better and that we got to contribute to it. We left this world in better state than we found it.
One of the things that you take certain industries to task, for example, financial services or big companies where they're managing quarter to quarter, profitability. And it seems that every time someone reaches beyond that, that they somehow get burned. It's very weird to me.
Look, we live in a twisted world right now.
Right?
We live in a twisted world right now where when companies decide to reinvest in themselves, Wall Street punishes them. Well, aren't they supposed to be building strong companies? We live in a world where when you have mass layoffs, your stock price goes up. WTF? Like, what kind of world are we living in? Where companies literally, CEOs and executives are literally, they have pressure put on them to make decisions that they know are bad for their companies and avoid making decisions that they know are good for their companies. The form of capitalism that we have today is not the capitalism that Adam Smith imagined 240 some odd years ago.
Forget about Adam Smith. My grandfather was the CEO of a company. It's not, and this was 80 years ago. That's not his company.
This new twisted, bastardized form of capitalism where we prioritize short-term over long-term and shareholders over customers or employees really began in the 1970s. It was it was in Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman theorized that the responsibility of business was to maximize profit within the bounds of the law. That was the responsibility of business. Like, what about ethics? And so that became sort of the banner for this new breed of capitalists that were coming up in the 80s and 90s, the folks like Jack Welch.
Oh, I was just thinking about him as you were saying that.
He was the poster child for everything that's broken about capitalism today. He was pioneering rank and yank, where you promote the top 10% of your people who contribute to the stock price and you fire the bottom 10%. The whole idea of internal competition inside companies. The whole idea of shareholder supremacy, where you prioritize the wants, needs, and desires of an external disinterested constituency over the people who are sacrificing for your company and buying your product, which is the same as a coach who's trying to build a good team by taking advice from the fans rather than taking care of the players. Like, that's what shareholder supremacy is. It's the madness of it. They eviscerated Glass-Steagall in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. Glass-Steagall was passed after the Great Depression to prevent another Great Depression from happening.
Seemed to work pretty well.
And between the Great Depression and the evisceration of it in the 80s and 90s, the total number of stock crashes we had was zero.
Right.
Since the evisceration, we had 87, we had .com, and 2008. We've had 3 significant stock market crashes since we removed the controls, all in the name of corporate profit, which is why they eviscerated it.
What do you think when you hear Jamie Dimon, Business Roundtable, they come out and they're like, oh, you know what, we have other constituencies?
Superficially, it's a good thing, because it's proof that folks like you and me who are talking about this stuff, the pressure that we're exerting on these very, very powerful people is working. That they would come out and even make a statement like that, we couldn't imagine that 10 years ago.
Right.
It just would never have happened.
Right.
So power to the people, that's what that is. That's proof that the people still have power, that we can exert that kind of pressure. However, the statement that they released read like sort of generic values that a company writes on their wall but doesn't actually live or breathe. The spokespeople that they had in the press release, Jamie Dimon, who basically when he talks about it, talks about giving back to the community.
Yeah, he's his big project in Detroit.
What we're talking about is giving to charity. Right? You could be a horrible person that gives to charity. You can be a horrible company that gives back to your community. It's much bigger than that. Being purpose-driven is not primarily about your CSR program. And then you had the CEO of Johnson & Johnson as another one of the signatories. Johnson & Johnson was just fined over $500 million for their contribution to the opioid crisis. They picked the worst spokespeople to make the statement.
This is Jill on Money.
Hey, gang, it's me, Jill Schlesinger. You know that. You're listening to The Pod. Certified financial planner, CBS News business analyst, host of this here podcast, Jill on Money. And I am here to tell you about our sponsor, Marcus by Goldman Sachs. They're helping people achieve financial well-being with simple and transparent banking products, including Clarity Money. That's a free personal finance management app that's part of the Marcus family. Clarity Money is your AI-powered financial champion that shows you a simple view of your finances together in one place. They recently launched a weekly budgeting feature that you've just got to try. The app does the hard part for you and calculates your average weekly spend by category. You can take that information so you can set informed budget goals based on what matters most to you. You can also subscribe to budget alerts to help keep you on track. And start with a clean slate every week. Who doesn't want that? It's super easy to use and can make a task like budgeting kind of fun. So go check it out. Download Clarity Money through Google Play or iTunes or visit marcus.com/clarity. And now back to our interview with Simon Sinek. Now, we've beaten up on the financial services sector. Let's talk a little bit about the technology sector.
Sure.
My new favorite people to bring. Because I sort of feel like the technology sector right now is sort of going through
what banking went through.
Yeah,
like
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, it does feel very reminiscent. I mean, I just said before you came in here, I was reading the newspaper and I had a picture up and I said to Mark, I'm like, you know what? I hate these people from Facebook. And he says, you've said that about 1,000 times. Like, I say it every day. And it's not just Facebook; it's a lot of them. But let's call them the poster children.
Facebook has become the poster child, like GE was the poster child.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's use that. So, what is their finite mindset that's operating right now?
Well, it seems that they're more interested in protecting their business model than advancing their cause. And when the company was founded, Zuckerberg had the opportunity to become one of the great leaders.
Yeah.
He could have become one of the ones that we're now telling stories about, and the storied leaders. And he had a cause, and the company was setting itself on a path really to advance that cause. And I'm not sure when or how, but something went a little bit sideways where protecting the business model became more important than advancing the cause.
Let's say that they brought you in. They say, Simon, come in here.
Yeah.
Wave your magic wand. What would you want to happen at Facebook to kind of course correct right now?
Well, number one, I think they need to be reminded as to what their just cause is, and that takes a priority over absolutely everything. And even if it means losing money or cutting businesses in the short term that would hurt them financially, it's the right thing to do for the future. And there's plenty of precedents for that. I mean, if you look at what Bob Iger and Tom Staggs did at Disney, it was kind of amazing, right? They sat there when Michael Eisner had moved out. Tom and Bob sat down and said, let's look at the portfolio called Disney, because Mike Eisner became obsessed at the end of his career with sort of world domination.
Yeah, I know.
And, and wanted to be in every category in every sector. And he did a lot of damage to the Disney brand, and to, they used to attract the top talent, and now the top talent was fleeing. And so one of the things they did is they looked at the businesses that didn't make sense to the cause that Walt Disney had given them. This good, clean family fund, this place to escape our stresses. And so they owned a music label that released songs from like death metal bands. There was a band called World War III from Disney, right? So it didn't matter if it was profitable enough or not. They sold it off.
Right.
They used to make Quentin Tarantino films. Like, we love Quentin Tarantino films, but
not under that label.
Not from Disney.
Right.
They sold it off. And if you've noticed, Disney has never and will never go into gaming. Like, they would have the best casino ever on the Las Vegas Strip. They own Star Wars and Marvel and all the Disney. It would be incredible. They'll never do it because gaming violates the values that Walt Disney put out for them. And so there's this incredible discipline and their willingness to hurt themselves in the short term financially because it was the right thing to do. And we've seen what happened. Disney has completely restored the luster. And the same thing can happen at Facebook.
Although I'm not sure they know what their values are right now. I think that feels like, when he said, I want to bring the world together and connect the world, what he sort of like seems to forget, like, except that I set this up as a college student to like score girls' looks, right?
Well,
so he doesn't really own that.
Yeah,
right?
It was the Facebook.
Right,
I mean, that's
exactly.
what it was.
And so what I think would be really helpful is if they went to a bunch of people like you and said, mirror back to us.
Yeah.
A way that we can be true to our value system.
Yeah.
And you might come back and say, well, you tell me, what do you care about? Well, I want to connect the world. But do you want to connect the world at the expense of hijacking democracy in the United States or causing problems elsewhere?
Yeah.
So now you're asking provocative questions. At some point, he and the people around him have to be willing to hear it.
See, here's the problem. They know these.
They know what they have to do.
They know these. I mean, it's not like I'm going to go in there and ask them questions they have not been asked or tell them things that they don't know.
But they don't want to.
I mean, it's the same with investment bankers. I mean, it's the same for all these companies.
Yeah, the difference I feel like with, at least in the banking sector, when the market pops you, like just really knocks you upside the head, then at least in the short term, it gives you a moment to say like, "Oop, I got to figure this out." Facebook has suffered reputationally, but look at their stock price.
I think the thing that these large companies forget is size is no indication of stability. And big just means you're big.
Yeah.
And wealth absolutely helps you survive scandal for longer, because you can pay your way out of it, and you can suffer financial losses for longer. But it is not a foregone conclusion that you'll survive. And we've seen WorldCom, Enron, Tyco. We've seen large companies that have prioritized the short term over the long term evaporate overnight. Lehman Brothers. I don't think there's a foregone conclusion that Facebook is going to be around in 20 years, and definitely not survive Zuckerberg's when he eventually leaves the planet.
You know, I almost feel like part of the problem is that you have this, feels like CEOs run amok, right? And there's no accountability, but we have these sycophantic boards that just sort of kiss their butts and let them do whatever they want. And then the sycophantic shareholders who don't want to do anything either. And so in that respect, I really believe we could create a structure to make them better, but they have to want to be better themselves.
I think we should take notes from what we talked about a minute ago about the business roundtable, which is in all leadership theory, one thing that anybody who studies the subject knows is the people always have the power. This is why dictators fear the people. This is why they have fake elections. It's why they bus in people and pay them so that they'll, have a rally that shows support. The people have the power. And so the public pressure is a real thing. And I think that especially, remember, Facebook tends to skew an older demographic. And so I think young people who are more aware of this and don't have any kind of locked in relationship to Facebook, I think they're going to start to see the number of people that they have on their platform just go down. Because at the end of the day, one of the huge advantages of online businesses is it's a low barrier to entry. Anybody can join. But it's also a low barrier to exit.
Right.
Which is nobody's actually loyal to online companies, right? Because we don't have a real relationship with them. It's an online relationship. So Amazon is a great example. We like Amazon. We like Amazon a lot. But do we love Amazon? The standard I use is if you got a free t-shirt with their logo, would you wear it out proudly? Would you wear it to paint the house and or to sleep in? If you got an Amazon t-shirt, would you wear that with pride on a weekend? No, probably not, because we like Amazon, but we don't love Amazon. And if something better came along, we're gone. And so the more that Bezos can expand, sort of his connection with us in our lives, the less likely we are to move because it becomes more difficult to offer an alternative competitive product. I think Facebook is the same, which is there's nothing to say that we wouldn't abandon them. They buy the companies that we abandon them for. I mean, they bought Instagram.
Right.
And lied to Instagram and lied to WhatsApp, promised them that they wouldn't violate their values and did. And both those founders left, quit. Unceremoniously.
I just want to read this because I love this. This is from Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. You should also buy his 2 other books, Start With Why and Leaders Eat Last. Those who are unsure whether their purpose, mission, or vision statement is a just cause, or those interested in leading with a just cause, can use these standards as a simple test. I love this. A just cause must be, for something, affirmative and optimistic, inclusive, open to all those who would like to contribute, service-oriented for the primary benefit of others, resilient, able to endure political, technological, and cultural change, idealistic, big, bold, and ultimately unachievable. So here's what I did. I read this. I dog-eared it, and I thought to myself, you know what? This makes sense. This is why I'm so happy where I am today, because it is not achievable. And I think that was the thing. That was like my red herring. I always thought it had to be a number, a dollar, a goal, a title, or whatever it was. And now what I always say is, here's the mantra of the show and why I go on TV. This is Jill on Money, where I take the mystery out of your financial life. I'm never going to do that. I try.
No, it's about advancing, not about achieving.
Right.
Infinite Game is about advancing something. The achievements, the finite components in the infinite game are the milestones. Like there's still finite games in the infinite game.
Right.
But they're milestones that advance towards them. In other words, you want to hit this certain number or you want to hit this milestone for a reason. The way I like to equate it, we overuse sports analogies and war analogies in business because it's all about winning and, sort of launching things and stuff like that. The better analogy is more like exercise or lifestyle.
Yes.
Right? You can have health goals. I want to lose X amount of weight by X date. And if you achieve that goal, you feel really great. And that goal helps motivate you and build that healthy lifestyle. But if you miss the goal, you're still way healthier now than you were. And you'll hit that goal a month or 2 later. Like, it's fine. And that's how we should be treating our business. Which is, you absolutely should have goals, but they're there to drive you and motivate you and keep you focused. But if you miss them, your business is still way healthier than it was, and you just stay on the path, you'll be fine. But to reward people for hitting arbitrary goals, even though a different leader might be building a healthy lifestyle, is how we have to think about it. We have to think about business more like a exercise and less like a game of baseball or football.
And I always use diet and exercise as like the perfect analogy to your financial well-being.
Because they're ongoing things, right?
It is just part of what you do.
It's an ongoing thing and a constant struggle.
Right. And it's habit, and it's like you're going to screw up and you're going to mess up. And you know what? None of us is perfect, and we love to, get out there and try to bring messages to people.
Smart people do dumb things.
Yes, exactly. Very good. Interesting. Before you go, we started the interview. And I said, what was your best career decision? It was basically going out on your own, flaming out, and then finding your infinite mindset, I presume. What was the worst decision of your career?
The worst decision of my career is I have had people in my life who were taking advantage of me, and my gut said fire them and don't work with them anymore. And I succumbed to pressure and advice from other people. Said, no, you need that person in your life. I should have just done it on my own. And so I beat myself up. I beat myself up because I should have known better.
You're listening to Jill on Money.
Okay, it's time for the Marcus Minute. We're presented by Marcus by Goldman Sachs. You ready to play Simon Sinek?
I'm ready.
What's one word to describe your relationship with money?
Yeah, sure.
What's always worth spending on?
My niece and my nephew.
What's the dumbest thing you've spent money on?
Oh my goodness, most things. I mean, most things I buy are dumb.
How much do you spend on a haircut with your good hair?
I think it's gone up. It really annoys me because it used to be $50 and it's just gone up, which has been really annoying, but he's good. And so I keep going to him, but I think it's like $80 now, which I think is too much for a haircut.
It's your last day on earth. You've got $100 in your pocket.
Yeah.
What's your last meal?
Probably sushi.
Where?
Believe it or not, there's a great sushi place in Dallas. I know. I didn't expect to hear that, did you?
Simon Sinek, the author of The Infinite Game. Thanks for playing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much to Simon Sinek. We are going to link to his website and a way for you to buy his book, The Infinite Game. Don't forget, we drop new episodes of Jill on Money every Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes Mark throws in a little bonus episode as well. If you want to make sure not to miss any bit of our content, just subscribe to us. You can do that wherever you're listening to this podcast. That might be Apple, Stitcher, Radio.com, Google Play. I don't care, but get it. And for 2020, here's a resolution request from us. Could you please leave us a review? Because this makes a difference. Also, it helps us understand the kinds of guests you want, the kind of content you want. Good, bad, or otherwise, I'll take it. Just please leave us a review. Our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer. We're distributed by Cadence 13. And this show is presented by Marcus by Goldman Sachs. See you next week.